Hello everyone, this is Damien. Welcome to Beginners Programming. This is going to be vlog numero dos. So today I have a few topics that I want to talk over. Um, I feel like these vlogs are, I feel like I've been using them so far to kind of justify my own decisions in why I'm teaching Java. Again, it's great where I live, but that's not really like 100% what I'm going for. Um, what I'm really trying to get across is the most important thing is to start. You know, if you're just watching these videos and you haven't started programming and you're like, oh, it's so much, I don't know where to start, I don't know what I'm doing, I think I'm gonna screw up, I have this fear of failure, I've been programming too long, it takes a lot of time, blah blah blah. So tonight, I went out and I bought a bunch of new clothes. I bought a longboard. I've never longboarded before in my life. And I went to a parking garage at about 8 p.m. There's nobody else there. And I have started learning how to longboard. Um, and if I'm to be 100% frank with you, I suck at it, right? I'm horrible. I snowboard a lot in the winter, but I haven't touched a skateboard. My foot has not touched a skateboard since I was maybe 14. And I wasn't really good at it then. So like, don't think that I'm trying to say I was Tony Hawk when I was 14. I sucked, but like, I could push myself around a little bit. So I hopped on a longboard tonight, and predictably, I sucked. But that doesn't mean I'm going to quit. I have to address the fact that I'm going to suck, and I'm going to suck for quite a while. The same thing kind of goes for programming. You know, when you start programming and it's your first time programming, your first language, you're going to get caught in a lot of different sort of problems. Now, when you're trying to make a decision about learning the program, a lot of people get hung up on this. So this is the first topic of the day. Wherever it is, there, there. I'm never going to get good at this. Like it's so I have a second monitor over here, and I'm trying to like look at that, and then everything's backwards. So I'm never going to get good at pointing at the topic. But what language should I learn? And the question is one that I hear from every beginner, right? I hear it from everybody, and everybody has an opinion, right? Right now, if I were to bet money on what would be the best return in the long run for your time, I would probably bet JavaScript, right? All signs point to the fact that JavaScript is going to be the next big language. It's where so much development is happening. It's where so much stuff is going on. The reason I don't advocate for JavaScript is because setting up an actually decent testing environment for JavaScript and getting experience on the tooling that's being used today, like React, Angular, Node, Express isn't really used as much, but like Vue and different frameworks like that, it's mind-numbing. Um, and just getting like a very simple program to run in any of those, or like if you want to even tack something on for like desktop, like uh, Electron, or maybe you want to do some mobile development with Cordova. Like just getting something to run and work is insane. And so I figure, Java will give you a very similar syntax to what you're going to get in JavaScript. So it's going to be a very different language overall, but the syntax is going to be largely the same. So let me flip this around the other way so that we have a screen capture going on. And I've prepared 3 code samples, right? So this is a very simple bit of code in Java, right? So I have a simple if-else statement and a simple for loop, right? So if it's true, and since true is always going to navigate to true, we're going to print out this statement is true, and then a simple for loop, right? So we run this, and we get the statement is true. Great. So that's Java. So keep in mind kind of what this looks like, right? Now let's take a look at JavaScript. This is JavaScript. And if you notice, the only difference between these two is I'm using console.log instead of system.out.println. Otherwise, it's the same code. So when people tell you that it's wildly different, it's not. Now, obviously, I'll give this a run for you guys. Cool, it works, same output. So just a side note, another reason I don't recommend learning JavaScript first is the IDE that I'm using this in costs like $300 a year or something. And while it's totally worth it for quickly testing out JavaScript, having $300 to try out a new hobby or maybe a new career skill is a pretty high barrier of entry if it's something you're not sure about. So lastly, Python. So Python, it's a little different. The syntax is different. So instead of curly braces, we have colons. Instead of true, we have 1, which will always evaluate to true. And for the for loop, we have for I in range 0, 10. And so when we run this, it's the same thing. So that's just a quick language comparison, but you'll notice that Python has the least syntax, right? There's no semicolons, there's no parentheses kicking around for a lot of stuff. So it's a little bit easier to write in terms of syntax. There's not as many rules there. But on the same note, in my area, if you're trying to get a job, nobody will hire you as a Python developer right now in Boston. Now, that may not be true in the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, but for right now, my goal is to get people jobs, and I don't think that that's what would happen if I was teaching Python. I think I would be teaching people a skill that they could use at a job. I've used Python to write scripts professionally before. I've written some maintenance scripts for an Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana cluster using Python, and it was a fine tool to use. But day to day, companies want me to know Java. They want me to know JavaScript. They want me to know web design, web development, data presentation, database languages, MySQL, PostgreSQL, MongoDB at one job. No matter what language you know, if you know one language well, that skill's going to transfer really quickly, right? So if I were to start today on picking up a new language that I've never written a line of code in, give me 3 weeks and I'll be proficient. Now, I'm not saying I'll understand how everything works optimally, right? And I'm not saying that the code I write is going to be winning any like LeetCode, championships for efficiency. But what I am saying is that in general, when I'm learning a new language, pretty much all the stuff I know is in every language, right? A for loop is a for loop. The syntax may differ slightly, but it's a for loop. An if statement's an if statement. A while loop's a while loop. Conditionals are the same. Ternary operators are the same. Methods vary a little bit, but they're still there. So when people get hung up on what language to learn, my advice is really just, it doesn't matter, but start today, right? Start today and set aside time every day. The only time you shouldn't code is if your mom dies, if your dog dies, if your child has a horrific accident, something like that. But you had a bad day at work, doesn't matter, go home and code. You had a rough week, and you sprained your ankle at the gym. Go home and code. Like, make the time. You want this, so work for it. All right. So second topic. Um, I think I'm going to switch the topics around. I feel like I'm not learning fast enough is one that I hear a lot. And I feel like I'm not learning fast enough is it sort of goes back to what I was saying earlier. I just picked up longboarding tonight. And I know what you're all saying. Like, Damien, you're 33, you're too old for that shit, you're gonna hurt yourself. And you know what? You're probably right. The same way that you were absolutely right when I went surfing for the first time in Playa Hermosa, and there were big 3-meter waves, and I fell and fucking hurt myself. And you know what? I got up, blew some water out of my lungs, then went back out. The same way, this is going to be hard for you, right? There's a reason why the company I work for right now, being a developer starts at about 70 to 80 grand straight out of school. No experience, just, you've got your bachelor's degree. And then if you've got about 3 years experience, you're looking at 90 grand. You've got 5 plus, you're probably looking at 110 on up. Now, if you're in a more specialized field of coding, right, like you do some coding, but you've also got a little bit of data science in your background, and maybe you've tinkered around a little bit with machine learning at some job or something. I don't know. You're probably looking at like 150 to 170,000 after 5 years, and it's not because you're not going to go in and just bust your brain. Like, every day is going to be a struggle. Every program you write is going to teach you something new. And it might not teach you something new that's good. It might teach you, oh my god, apparently Java can't do this thing that C++ can do, and that's what I learned first. Or, oh my god, why isn't this library accepted here? Or why didn't this pull the right thing from Maven? Now I have the wrong dependency in my code. And, like, every time you do something, you learn something, for better or worse. So sometimes just sitting down and speed coding to improve your efficiency, and then going back and looking over it and going, oh, I could have done that better. Oh, I could have done this better, and kind of picking your own code apart. Code something and ask somebody more knowledgeable for a code review. Try implementing a new algorithm. Go online, look up binary search or bubble sort, or something along those lines. And eventually, over time, you're going to become very, very efficient with how you're spending your time and what you're learning. So don't be concerned that you don't know enough. This is a field that's both broad and deep. So give yourself time and give yourself room to grow. And so this kind of feeds into the third point that I want to make. Syntax versus logic. So the reason I have this as a topic is sort of to gauge where you are when you're learning, right? When you're first starting out a language, like when you pick up Java or, God forbid, Scala or, Objective-C or just regular C, there's a lot of syntax, right? There's a lot of parentheses, there's a lot of squiggly brackets, there's the occasional angle bracket, or no, there's the occasional angle bracket in Java. There's square brackets, aka braces, there's dots, there's commas, there's semicolons, so there's really there's a lot of syntax, and it's used in a lot of places, in a lot of languages. And when you first start a language, you are going to have errors out the wazoo, right? You're just going to forget. I mean, as it stands now, when I'm not using an IDE and I'm coding in Java, I've spent a lot of the last year coding in JavaScript, so I'll just leave semicolons out, and then I'll go, oh my god, I can't believe I left a semicolon out. Even, and like if I'm just trying to write something hacky, like Python has ruined me, and there's certain JavaScript stuff where you don't necessarily need a semicolon at the end, although you can because it's JavaScript and you know. I feel like the JavaScript motto is kind of like JavaScript, fuck you, and that's just the rule for the language, right? Like, oh, you can do this if you want, but like if you don't want to. So back to the point that I was making though. When you're first starting out, expect every error you make to be uh, a syntax error and a logic error, right? You've not only have you typed it in wrong, but your idea is wrong. And as you use the language more and more, you should get less, or well, fewer and fewer, uh, you know, sort of like syntax errors. And you should start getting more and more logic errors, right? And I don't mean more and more, but I mean hopefully those reduce over time too. But as a percentage, your syntax errors should go down and your logic errors should go up as a overall. Because over time, you'll get really used to uh, writing code and reading code and handling different bits and pieces of code, and you'll know where parentheses go. You'll know, oh, I have one extra parenthesis here, or not enough parentheses here to close this if statement. Oh, this scoping bracket's missing, or whatever, and these things will start to come automatically. What doesn't come automatically is thinking through an entire problem and going, does this need to be inside or outside of the loop? Should I initialize this variable here or here? Do I need to have a return value for this method? These are the questions that are going to cause you a lot of problems, right? And maybe there will be times where your problem's even worse than that. I'm like, oh man, I need like 4 things returned from this method. How am I going to do it? And maybe the answer there is just create an object and do just that. But generally speaking, if you need 4 things returned from a method, the answer is your method's doing too much stuff. So take that with a grain of salt as well. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for the overall process of learning how to code, but there's more to be said for when you understand that this isn't going to be quick, it's not going to be easy, and the battle turns from being one where, oh, it's weird to type this, it's hard, to, oh, this is actually really, really difficult because this is a hard problem. So I'll leave this on a problem that I solved recently. There was a challenge on LeetCode, and LeetCode had this thing where it's like, given a string and a substring, which appears somewhere in the larger string, find the shortest string you can return that contains all of the letters of the substring. The letters can be in any order. And it was just this nightmare code that I spent 6 hours on it the first time. And the problem was, one of the tests was they gave you like a string that was like, oh my god, maybe 1,500 characters, and then they gave you a substring that was about 100. And my algorithm was super slow. It timed out, and I ended up failing the challenge. And so I went back and I rethought my logic, and I came up with a completely different solution that took me like 12 hours, right? And now I know what you're thinking to yourself, Damien. You spent 18 hours coding on a problem for free. Why? And the answer is, well, it's like a puzzle. You know, some people like doing Sudoku. Um, and you have to approach some coding problems just like that. It's a puzzle. It's going to be complicated. And the end result of this story is I eventually got that thing that took 18 seconds or 15 to 18 seconds of computer processing power down to running in 0.003 seconds. Um, and so, you know, there's a lot to be said about, you know, as you get better, you'll come up with better solutions, and these things will become more natural. But sometimes you're just given a hard problem, and you need to experiment. So, good luck, everyone. This has been vlog number 2. Have a good night. Peace.